That period was chosen by the curator at the Walker Center in Minneapolis. It was a very wise choice because there were specific things happening in Andy Warhol's life and his work in that period that were very significant to his work. But I think just here we are 40 years later plus, and the show is meant to say these things are still relevant. You know, they're not just artifacts of an ancient civilization that we can barely read. I mean, Warhol's very prophetic without intending to be. I mean, he's most famous, I suppose, for saying, in the future, everybody will be world famous for 15 minutes. Well, you know, he wouldn't have been surprised by this, by reality shows. He might have been shocked by Paris Hilton, but maybe not. But it's not just glamour and celebrity that he was talking about. He was talking about a certain flaws in American culture and American society that he was part of, that he professed to only be observing, you know, not commenting on, not criticizing. But you know, that's the most devastating kind of criticism, is to be a witness to something.
Stand back a little bit.
Stand back and let it do what it does. And he was a voyeur, you know, but a voyeur doesn't direct anything. A voyeur wants you to do what you do. You know, he doesn't want to tell you what to do. And even when Andy was making his movies, he was basically not telling people what to do. He'd say, okay, there's a couch, there's a camera, you know, I'm turning on the camera, you know, do something, and whatever you want. And that's what he did. And people would reveal themselves. The camera could be a weapon. You know, don't take that to heart. But the camera can be a weapon, you know, if it's used in the right way. And in a strange way, Andy was capable of using the camera as a weapon just by its merciless objectivity.
At the time, were you influenced by his work in terms of it more into his films, or were you also inspired by his artwork? Or?
No, I was very interested in the art scene too. I mean, there's a Canadian artist, film and sculpture and painting named Michael Snow, who is still who just pulled the power there.
Hold on a second here.
Hold on. It's a disaster.
There we go.
There we go.
That one?
Yeah, I was talking about Michael Snow. He made one of his first films called Wavelength. It's a very famous sort of art film. That was shown at the Isaacs Art Gallery in Toronto, and so it was projected on the walls, and then there were painters there, a lot of local painters, a lot of New York painters would be at that gallery. So I was very aware of the Toronto art scene and the Toronto artists as well, and therefore the New York underground movement, which was a big inspiration in terms of filmmaking, was inextricably bound up with the New York art scene as well. So I remember going to New York and meeting Michael Snow there, and having dinner with him, talking. I mean, I probably was that far away from meeting Andy because I'm sure he never did.
So you never met him?
But I never actually did.
Huh. Well, okay, let me ask you a different kind of question. This is something a little bit more relevant to what we're actually doing here and sort of the context of our audience and everything. What are we doing here? It's kind of interesting. We have we obviously just have sort of a consumer camera here, but through internet distribution now, it really is easy for video to sort of flow around. So, you know, anybody can put up a video and then everybody around the world can instantly access it. So there's no real need for distribution. It's more just about promotion, I guess, and promotion sometimes works for itself based on the actual content. I was just wondering if you had any opinions about sort of the future of how this would affect filmmaking.
Oh, I think it already has hugely affected filmmaking, and in fact, these days that's a pretty big camera, you know, compared with what you could shoot with now.
Right.
You know, to shoot SD cards and have a much smaller camera immediately, but just the fact that every movie has to have a website. You know, I mean, you can't promote it if you don't have a website. Then you have website designers, and what was done with King Kong, which was to have daily, pieces, video pieces done
Yeah.
on the shooting of the film, so that people were involved.
That's exactly kind of in the genre of what we're doing, video
Yeah.
blogging for the film.
Yeah. It changes everything, it changes people's understanding of films, how they're made, the fact that they are made. It makes the audience be a kind of collaborator of the film. It demystifies filmmaking. There are good aspects to that, and maybe there are some bad ones. Who would go to a magic show if everybody knew how the magic tricks were done? Well, that's one way of looking at it. It's only one way. On the other hand, I think everybody knows how to do those tricks, and maybe that's a good thing. So, I think that the effect of the web is huge. I mean, it's immense. There's probably, Darwin's theory of evolution and the web. Those are the two big things. Both really hugely.
Okay, I've got one more question, and then I want to make sure everybody else gets involved here too. What's the next big sort of disaster? Or what's the next big, is there anything that you think, let me rephrase the question, and say with a large-scale disaster compared to a personal human psychological one, say the falling of the Twin Towers in New York, that obviously leads to a lot of personal problems with different kinds of people. Specifically, do you get any inspiration from those? I mean, do you spend your life thinking a lot about these kinds of things, or where do you get your inspiration? Is it from big events like this, or is it from?
I mean, I think. As I say, the bigger the event, the more specific you have to be.
Right.
How can you tell a war story without talking about specific people and their experiences of that war? You can't. I mean, it's one thing. You read a report that's very general, and that gives you some feeling for it. But if you really want to convey the experience of it or the meaning of it, you have to get specific. And when he talked about disaster, I mean, one of his first disaster paintings was called Tuna Fish Disaster. Well, it wasn't about how the poor tuna fish are being killed. It was about two suburban Detroit housewives who had tuna fish sandwiches together and then died horribly because the tuna fish was tainted. So he called that a disaster. Now, for those people and for their families, it absolutely was a disaster, And from that, though, come the ripples of all kinds of comments on consumerism and mass production of things like cans of tuna, and mass productions of things like Andy's art, and all kinds of things. So he certainly understood that when he called his paintings disasters, they were very small personal disasters, but that had huge significance.
All right.